how do you empower a team? How do you move away from you being the founder and deciding everything to the team taking decisions in a much faster way, and the team collectively being better than you as a founder, much, much, much better. And that's it's a difficult transition as a founder because you're used to being the number one guy, but it's no longer scalable.
Welcome to How Leaders Lead with me, David Novak. Each week, I'm sitting down for real conversations with some of the top leaders I know in business, sports, entertainment, and in life to find out what really makes them tick and how they get such incredibly good things done. As I always say, every leader has their own style and their own way of leading. And I can't wait for you to hear this conversation with Timo Boldt. Timo's basically redefining the restaurant business in the United Kingdom. He actually founded his company at the ripe old age of 27 years old, and he's building this great new brand called Gousto. Now Gousto is the largest meal kit company in the United Kingdom, valued at way over $1 billion in just the past 7 years. Gousto is a unicorn company and is getting close to 2,000 employees, if you can believe it. Gousto delivers fresh ingredients for tasty home-cooked dinners with the easy-to-follow recipes and then perfectly measured ingredients, so when that meal kit arrives at your home, you've got everything you need to put a great tasting meal together. Timo leads with a focus on constant learning, and I mean constant learning. He's a true innovator, and he's a believer that nothing big happens without getting people involved. So culture is his number one priority. Timo, thanks very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David. Absolute pleasure.
Good. Timo, I always like to start at the beginning. Tell us about your upbringing.
I grew up in Berlin, Germany, as you might be able to tell from my accent. And back then, Berlin was divided in 4 zones following World War II. So a lot of my neighbors were Americans. My mom, which was quite unique, she lived in the US when she was 16. So both my neighbors and my mom always encouraged me to live in the US one day. So when I was 16, 17, I lived in California, in Napa, graduating from high school. And then I came back to Germany. I studied in Germany, and then I went back to California to study at San Diego State University. So I've lived in different countries, and then for the last 12 years, I've lived in the UK.
Do you have a story from your childhood days that will tell us a lot about the kind of person that you've become?
I was the type of kid that just loved being outdoors all day, surrounding myself with lots of people. I'm a very social person. I love people. So I played all day, and I got into a lot of trouble because I wouldn't come back for dinner, and my parents had to run outside looking for me. And I think that's pretty typical of me. Just, being outdoors, having fun, being on my legs, not sitting at a desk.
What'd you want to do when you grew up?
Believe it or not, I always said I wanted to be a chef. I watched how my mom made amazing food. So I always thought as a kid I would be a chef one day. And then I stumbled into finance, as one did pre-financial crisis. But I always loved food, and I had the opportunity to live in Napa Valley, where I worked in a supermarket. I've got godparents in Napa Valley who have vineyards and ice cream shops. So I always aspired entrepreneurs who set up food businesses.
Yeah, you went to Cambridge University, and so what was your first job out of school, and what'd you learn from it?
I did an internship. I had a couple of obvious jobs in a supermarket, in a vineyard, all kinds of small things. But then my first proper job was an internship at BMW. And I spent 6 months in Germany and Spain introducing a new car. And the key manager from the BMW got ill. So they gave me the management job as an intern. So I really learned kind of the lesson of, you work hard, you're ambitious, and then you're given huge ownership. And it really instilled a lot of confidence in me.
What was the route that you took that ultimately made you an entrepreneur from that point?
So I started in finance. I had a small startup at university, and then my godparents are hardcore entrepreneurs. They have built a dozen of companies over the last 50 years. Some of them failed, others did really well. So I always looked up to them. I started a small company at university, just having fun. And then I went into finance.
What was that company? Timo?
To be honest, so the stock market went up and up and up and up when I studied. So we launched a student fund, raising money from students and investing student money. And we did phenomenally well. But to be honest, plain luck, we invested into Chinese sugar manufacturers. And since the stock market went up, those penny stocks went up even further. And everyone thought we were amazing at stock picking, but we weren't.
So how did you get out of that business?
We were so incredibly lucky. We shut down the fund. We made a decent amount of money, but we shut it down when we graduated, and we graduated in late 2007. So right before the financial crisis, at the peak, and it looked like we're amazing at stock picking, but obviously only luck.
Well, what does that say? Do you want to be both lucky and good? It sounds like you were both in that case. But now you went from there to you work at a hedge fund, right?
Yes. So I joined investment banking first, and I feel like I got an amazing toolbox, lots of analytical skills, how to talk to clients, how to talk to CEOs, how to kind of, be financially knowledgeable. But I felt like I don't want to be an advisor. So I joined a hedge fund, spin-off from Goldman Sachs, and was given huge ownership at a very young age. I did all the trading. I was managing the London office, and we had a $200 million long-short equity fund I was in charge of. So it was tremendous pressure, tremendous ownership, and it just changed the way I thought. Before joining the hedge fund, it would have never occurred to me to pick up the phone to a CEO. And in this environment, I was encouraged to just fly somewhere, meet the CEO, meet the team, form my own opinion. If I like the stock, buy the stock. If not, sell the stock. It was a tremendous learning experience. So I'm really grateful for it.
So you started out very early on. You end up managing a BMW business. Then you end up managing a hedge fund business. You're not even 25 yet. How did you get so much responsibility so early?
I think I've always managed to surround myself with people who are better than me.
But how do you do that? How do you do that at 25? I mean, that sounds point. All nice and good, but how did this happen? What do you have that made that happen?
I guess I'm a learnaholic. I listen to all types of people all day. I learn very, very fast. I'm good with numbers. And then I work incredibly hard. My parents have taught me the value of kindness, generosity, and people focus. And then I always had really good work ethics, and I took ownership over whatever I would do from an early age.
Tell us the story of how you came up with your idea for Gousto.
So in 2011, I traveled to Italy during truffle season, which is phenomenal. And we were 14 guys traveling to Italy, a couple of Italians. We ate phenomenal food. And in the back of my mind, I enjoyed working in finance. I enjoyed the responsibility, but I really wanted to start my own business. So when in Italy, I really felt like I have to start my own business. I have to do something around food. So I kind of combined the two, and then I did a little bit of thinking. I saw 4 big trends in the market: sustainability, health, convenience, and online. Those are the 4 biggest trends in Europe, and I'm sure in the US as well, in grocery land. And they're absolutely seismic shifts in the market. So I felt like this idea of Gousto is ticking all 4 boxes. It's a much more sustainable way. It's healthy for you. It's so convenient because you get everything delivered. There's no food waste. So this is how it kind of started. But to be honest, I was quite naive when I launched it, and I obviously had to throw away the plan on day one.
It's really hard to build a business from scratch, yet you've done it. Can you tell us a story of what was your biggest struggle early on?
Initially, I got this all wrong. I focused on myself as a customer, young, cash rich, time poor. And to be honest, the people who cook the most are families who live outside of big cities, who live incredibly busy lives. So I think I got the proposition all wrong. And then secondly, the biggest learning has been around how do you build a team? How do you really, empower a leadership team? How do you hire people who are more senior than you? What's a good culture? How do you hire against that culture? To be very honest, the first 3 senior executives I hired, I had to fire because they absolutely killed the culture. And that was enormously painful from an emotional point of view, and one of the biggest learnings.
What would you tell entrepreneurs who are maybe 1 or 2 clicks behind you in terms of their thought process and where they're at? What have you learned that's sort of untaught and unspoken?
I think leadership looks really glamorous from the outside, but when you're on the inside, I think it's really all about learning to manage yourself. What are your demons? How do you turn limiting factors into sources of energy? How do you energize yourself when you are in the energy trough? This stuff no one really teaches you at business school, but everyone has ups and downs and personal issues, and so managing yourself before you lead others, I think, is kind of my biggest lesson learned.
How do you energize yourself when you get in that trough?
All the typical stuff. I exercise. If I've got a bad day, I know I have to go to the gym even more. Exercise, running, good diet, but it's all about mental fitness and mental health and putting your mindset to it. And then obviously helping others is a phenomenal way of getting yourself out of the low.
Now that your business is a success, how do you make sure that you keep your edge?
As a company, we absolutely obsess about the customer. So it's all about listening to customer feedback. It's about really obsessing about customer net promoter score, and then, putting everything, all our energy behind customer roadmaps, even if it takes a couple of years. On a personal level, I'm trying really hard to educate myself. I went to Cambridge University on weekends. I'm becoming a certified coach at the moment. So I'm coaching 2 CEOs who are 20 years older than I am, and 2 other phenomenal people. And I also sit on two company boards, which I tremendously enjoy because it gives you so much perspective into other companies and cultures.
So what makes you a good coach?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm a good coach. I'm not claiming that. But I think coaching is all about listening. It's about understanding what makes people tick. It's about raising questions rather than subscribing answers. And I think what I find fascinating is 30% of time people want to talk about confidence and imposter syndrome. 30% of time people want to talk about how to build a leadership team, how to build a great culture, and then 30% it's individual topics. But the level of pattern recognition is actually quite large, which took me a long time to realize. So I guess the more you coach, the better you get. There's a huge network effect, and that's really rewarding.
I know you do lectures for the industry and at Cambridge. Tell us a story about how that experience has powered your own leadership.
Yeah, so I give guest lectures. I speak at conferences, and I think it's if you're forced to distill your thoughts on a piece of paper and you have to write it down, and the audience is really educated and sophisticated, and you can't just wing it. It's amazing for you on a personal level how it helps you to learn what you already know, but just by articulating it, I think it's immensely powerful. And the first couple of times I did it, I was so nervous. I practiced, and you kind of make it through, and you feel, I didn't feel great about myself, but then you get really good feedback and it builds your confidence. You feel better the next time, and you go back into your organization and you see it in a different way. You take some of the lessons into your team. It's powerful.
I'm really curious. I saw where you went back and got an MBA after starting Gousto. Was there a specific experience that made you do it?
just for background, I came from a very high salary to no salary starting Gousto, and then it took me 2-3 years to draw a salary, and then after that, I pretty much had to tell my wife, "Oh, by the way, the small salary I'm now drawing, I'm reinvesting into doing this MBA." It was a very she's always been massively supportive, but in hindsight, it felt quite brave back then. Yeah, I always I've known a couple of people who did MBAs, and I felt like no one has ever taught me how to lead people or manage people. Everything I did was gut feel. In finance, you don't learn anything about culture. I mean, that's not fair, but it's to a lesser extent, I think. So I felt like I should really train myself and do this. It's a weekend course. So every other weekend, spending 2 days learning. I was the youngest guy in the cohort. Everyone else was managing a lot more people. So I felt like I shamelessly learned from other people and stole their ideas. So it was amazing. I made friends for life, and I met many great people. 2 of them I hired.
That's great. You describe Gousto as a data company that happens to sell food. Explain.
Yeah, so data is running through everything we do. We apply algorithms and automation in the supply chain, but we also push personalization. So you should really never ever see the menu I'm seeing. If your daughter turns lactose free, or your son is vegan for a month, or whatever it is, we should really be for you. You should never see the same stuff. So personalization, customization, total customer obsession. And to win in this market, given how emotional food is, we felt like early on that we really needed this technology and data focus. Because if you don't automate the factory, there's no way you can next day, same day, deliver food across all of the UK. So we've always played this really long game, but it's really ingrained, even in smaller things. Every marketing campaign we do, we A/B test in real time on Facebook, Twitter. Everything we do is tested from a data point.
You've personally been described as an inspiring leader that can get all levels of the organization fired up about your vision. How do you do it?
That's enormously kind. I don't know who said that. I think leadership is all about kindness and listening, and it's about walking the floor and talking to people and understanding what their issues are, what their challenges are. I don't think there's a magic wand for leadership, but it is really down to basics. It's how much care do you take of your people? Do you understand them? And are you mindful of their personal issues, which might cause performance issues and so on? So I think it's this mentality. Care is one of our biggest principles at Gousto, one of the 3 values we have. So we hire people specifically for empathy, for that level of kind of leadership thinking.
Can you give us an example of how you raise the bar and balance between being a cheerleader and believer in people and just the need to really make sure that you're jumping over that hurdle?
Yeah, I think it's all about high support, high challenge. If you're only in the high support area, then I think you're not unlocking the best potential in people. It's all about finding this balance of stretching people, but at the same time supporting them. So I think for us as a company, we've worked really hard to create psychological safety. So everyone, including people in the factory floor and so on, everyone can speak up. Everyone can share their opinion, but at the same time, it's a meritocracy. It's very data driven. Data is hugely transparent. You can look up what anyone is working on in the company. Everyone has goals. Goals have timelines. So I think you create this high performance culture where people really want to strive, and then you try to reinforce it. So every time somebody succeeds at anything, we celebrate them. So we have quarterly events. We give people, extra holidays for achieving amazing things. People nominate people for ownership awards. So the culture becomes reinforcing.
It's obvious you're almost crazy intentional about building culture. You go back to get an MBA so you can learn more about it. Where did this come from?
I think my mom has always taught me the value of kindness and generosity. And my dad has always been both of them have always been extremely curious. So we would have, going back all the way to kind of me having dinner as a kid, my dad has those huge books everywhere, and he would pull them out whenever we discussed anything. And we didn't have Google back then or Wikipedia. So we would pull out huge books, and he would kind of instill this idea into me that if you don't know stuff, it doesn't really matter as long as you look it up. You can't not know it, you have to look it up. So we would interrupt dinner probably 5-10 times every single day, look up stuff in big books. Now it's easier. My dad still pulls out books. But I think it's that mentality. It doesn't matter what you know. It's about how you get the information.
Now, you mentioned care and hiring for empathy. What are your other cultural values, and how do you go about creating them?
Yeah, so so we have 3 values. They're dream, deliver, care. And then we have 9 ownership principles that are kind of nine behaviors that underpin them and bring them alive. But I mean, dream is all about thinking big. No one knows how this model can look in the next 10 years or 20 years. Your idea might be much better than my idea. So it's blue ocean. It's not me knowing how the future looks. I really need you and everyone to think big to figure this out. So this is kind of the first idea. And part of dream is also this idea of self-development, taking ownership over your own development. The second value is deliver. I mean, any startup has to deliver value fast to customers or you fail. It's really, really simple. So we've always been obsessed about results, numbers, data, building a meritocracy where people really get promoted fast for doing amazing things. But then the third one is this care idea, doing it collectively, collaborating across functions. As we get bigger, I mean, by your standards, we're still a tiny company, but for us, it feels like we're getting a lot bigger. So collaboration is becoming increasingly important. No politics, no silos, working, as one team, pulling from the same side, super important.
I understand, Timo, that you wrote and published a letter which was entitled "A Letter to My Younger Self. One Day You'll Have to Take Your Hands Off the Wheel." Why did you write this letter, and what's the essence of it?
It's been a fun exercise. It's been a while ago. I think it's difficult when you are in the grind, you're working really, really hard and long hours all the time. You almost have to force yourself to step out of the noise and force yourself to reflect and build this, reflection practice. It's hard. So I felt like I should probably write down my thoughts and share them. And I guess one of the biggest lessons learned for me is this whole, how do you empower a team? How do you move away from you being the founder and deciding everything to the team taking decisions in a much faster way, and the team collectively being better than you as a founder, much, much, much better. And that's it's a difficult transition as a founder because you're used to being the number one guy, but it's no longer scalable. So I think it's taken me 2-3 years to really, really, really build this team, empower the team, come up with a team charter, team values, red and green card behaviors, all this good stuff. But now it's amazing because I've got headspace. The team more or less runs the business. I've got headspace to think, to take care of culture and people and strategy.
So you're obviously hiring great talent. Do you have anything unique about your hiring process that helps you really bring in the best and the brightest?
Yeah, I mean, we've done all the standard stuff. We do personality tests, we do some intelligent tests and case study interviews. But I think what ultimately works the best is once that's all done, it all comes down to personality. So I like to take out future hires for dinner, for brunch. I take the entire leadership team out for breakfast, including the new person before we make an offer. It's about chemistry. It's about understanding whether they fit in. And if we have certain reservations, we try to create, a situation where we really push the person's button. So we role play. One person in the leadership team takes a certain role, pushes the buttons, and that really brings out certain things you can't figure out in interviews easily.
You've mentioned earlier when you first started the company, you had a few people you brought on that you had to fire. What did you learn from that experience and how to do it?
I think I think when I started the business, I didn't have the appreciation for culture I have today. And what I learned the hard way is you can only mess it up once. So if you bring in somebody, I mean, we brought in somebody from a hugely prestigious company. The guy was 30 years older than I am. He managed hundreds of employees. But then he joined our company, and what we didn't know is that he shouts at people, and he built a horrible kind of level of pressure on people. So the what was good, he achieved results, but the how was all wrong. And so within a couple of days, I had the entire company. I mean, we had a small company back then, but the entire company complained to me. So I had to lean into this tough decision. The guy was kind of performing, but in a horrible way that would drive away my most talented people really quickly if I didn't do anything. So I felt obligated to act fast. And in hindsight, I think the best decision was to do it really, really fast. I fired him after 10, 12 weeks, and everyone pretty much said, well done, thank you, this is great, makes perfect sense. No one was surprised. And then I sadly had to do it twice again because I didn't learn fast enough from it. I think I was so blinded by the fact that I can hire those senior people. I was amazed by it, and I didn't put enough care into selecting them against culture. After I messed it up 3 times, I feel like we now have a really, really robust way of interviewing. But even now, you only get it right 75% of times.
Right. How do you know when to take your hands off the wheel when you're managing others?
I mean, I think leadership is all about giving and taking space. Ultimately, I feel like my job is to define the vision. Where do we want to be? And when do we want to be where? But then it's all about giving people space. So, whether they take Avenue A or Avenue B is up to them, really. They have to own the consequences, but they take the decision. And I mean, you quickly realize which leader, which function is capable of doing this and which one isn't. So I think for you as a CEO, the key thing is to build up an understanding of what high standards look like by function. If I don't know anything about marketing, I call up 20 CMOs to understand how their brain works. And then after I talk to 20 CMOs, I start to understand how high standards look like. And if I realize my own function doesn't operate at those high standards, I try to enforce them, and I try to bring in this level of thinking. So I think your job is to constantly assess where we are. We have a wonderful mechanism for this. We have quarterly super days, which means I'm spending 2 full days in every single function, every single quarter, meeting every person apart from the management and leadership team. So everyone is presenting what they did last quarter, what they do next quarter, every junior person. And it builds this insane level of understanding where each function is, how they progress over time. It gives you an opportunity to celebrate and recognize people. It's one of the most fun things we do.
Speaking of recognition, how does that play into your personal management style?
So I tried to copy what you do, but it hasn't worked yet. We're not doing it right. My team doesn't want to sing. No, I think it's all about finding your own mechanisms. For example, we have quarterly town halls where people can nominate people who epitomize the ownership principles. So if you've done something amazing around care, somebody might nominate you, and then you win, extra holidays, a bottle of champagne, everyone is clapping, your picture is on the wall. It doesn't cost a lot. People absolutely love it.
You've got a list of personal awards that basically takes up a full page. How do you stay humble? And do you have a story that really drives home the importance of being humble?
I think business is moving so incredibly fast that we today have a business that looks like it's succeeding, but who knows how this business looks in 2-3 years? Somebody might out execute us. So I think business is really about being humble and staying hungry and lean and focused. You can mess it up so fast, and you see this every single day. Great companies, going from great to poor to out of business. So I think it's really instilling this work ethic into the team that we have to relentlessly focus to win. So to me, it's about celebrating the team and recognizing them. But I'm super future oriented. I think we're on day one of building Gousto. We have 10, 20 more years of hard work in front of us.
Well, so how do you stay self-aware as a leader and as a company, and how do you also take this massive belief in learning and make sure it cascades across your organization?
Yeah, so we do twice a year. We do 360 feedback. Everyone can give me feedback. People are amazingly generous in sharing the good stuff, the bad stuff, and it helps. Once you're past this defensiveness, it really helps you to kind of build development plans by person. So I hope that everyone at Gousto has personal development plans every single half year and to focus on learning. Because once you realize how much the company can do to create unique experiences for you as a person, it's just mind-blowing how fast, how learning can be expedited. So that's kind of the belief system. You got to give systematic feedback, but then you have to turn it into development plans by person, and then you got to celebrate every single milestone they achieve.
I have to tell you, most of my interviews are with CEOs and leaders in the United States. And obviously, we've been going through COVID-19 here. And I just thought it'd be great to get a perspective on how you're looking as a leader, what's happening with COVID-19 with your business and also across Europe. You're based in London, I know.
So obviously, it's extremely difficult for all of us, in this time. I'm feeling enormously proud of the team for rising to the occasion. My top priorities were to really focus on team safety, focus on customer satisfaction, and then make sure that we have enough capacity to really feed the nation across all of the UK. And I'm really proud the team has done such a fantastic job. We're hitting 80% net promoter score. The team is safe. So we really, really achieved our core mission of safety and customer satisfaction. We continue to innovate during this crisis. We have launched innovation that has seen our plastic scores come down hugely. We have pushed new product launches to customers to make sure, whilst customers have to stay home, they at least get to enjoy amazing food. And now we're seeing real big breakthroughs on capacity. So for us as a food business, feeding the nation, volume has been unprecedentedly high. And I'm extremely thankful to the team for doing such an amazing job. When you look at the UK, briefly regarding your question on Europe, I think it's fair to say that Germany probably did the best job in Europe handling the crisis for various reasons.
Do you have a particular story that you're really proud of where you guys have innovated and done something unique?
Yeah, I mean, look, for example, we worked on this new innovation for 18 months, and I think most companies would have just postponed the launch. And I have a team of really amazing people who secured a Gousto patent for that solution right pre-COVID. And they then decided to work every single day instead of working from home. They worked out of the factory to make sure the launch goes well. And I'm just incredibly proud of them. Every single day they drove to the factory. They worked 7 days a week, night and day. They got it live. And it's meant that we've seen, I think, another 77 million plastic straws are now taken out of the system. The equivalent of those 77 million plastic straws. So enormously proud of those people rising to the occasion, going the extra mile, going to the factory, despite, them being able to work from home if they wanted to.
Yeah, that is great. I suppose with, being in the meal kit business, your business has had to take off because people were getting home delivery. So are you having record growth?
We are having record growth. We're just making sure we can fulfill. And I'm extremely proud of the team that customer satisfaction stayed so high. We saw 10 times the volume on certain days than pre-COVID-19. We're seeing, 5 to 10 years of secular trend compressed into the matter of weeks. So pre-COVID, 7% of grocery was traded online. Now in the UK, it's 12%. in a market that's hundreds of billions. So it's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as you look to the future, what do you think has changed that's going to be a major plus for your business down the road?
I think ultimately, customers who try online for the first time and they then get into the habit, they get it 5 to 10 times, they will stay in that habit. So that change, the seismic shift towards online is here to stay. It's only accelerating because the shift has been artificially constrained by capacity not being available. Now supermarkets, Amazon, everyone is heavily investing into online grocery capabilities. So we're seeing a second wave shift in the next 12 to 18 months, I would assume. And the online experience, the customer satisfaction is just so high, people will not return to what they did before.
I talked to Brian Cornell, who's the CEO of Target, recently, and he said that he felt with all the virtual meetings and people from across the company calling in, that he was closer to what was going on than maybe he was even before COVID-19. How do you look at that?
I totally agree. I think the big benefit is it feels to me that we're like squeezing months and months of innovation into weeks, simply because we're talking 7 days a week. And the level of focus from the leadership team, the management team on very detailed discussion is greater than ever before. So I do think we're seeing a massive acceleration in execution capabilities.
You're a huge champion of diversity and especially women in business. Why is this a passion point for you?
Yeah, it's a very personal one. I look at, my wife who works in research. She's a neuroscience researcher. And it's a man-dominated world, and it can be tough, I think, for female researchers out there, because the culture is very male-dominated. And similarly, one of my best friends, she played tennis at the Olympics. She worked in investment banking in the 90s in New York as a female trader, as the only female trader. And then she went away having 2 kids. Now she came back to work only to find out that things haven't changed that much. Yes, there's a lot of language that has changed, but when you look at the statistics, the world hasn't moved forward that much, and it's quite sad in a way. So I feel this obligation for Gousto to be, a force of positive movement in the right direction, and also from a purely selfish point, right? We need 50-50 talent pool. We can't afford to not hire the very best people, whether they're male or female or whatever other background they have.
What would be 3 bits of advice you could give other aspiring leaders?
Well, you got to manage yourself before you lead others. That's absolutely number one. And then I think you got to play the long game. We see so much shortism in this world, and the quarterly earnings are obviously extremely important. But playing the long game, I really think stands out in today's world. And then I think it's about setting big, bold ambitions. Setting mediocre targets is just the most commonly traveled avenue to mediocreness, and so you got to stretch yourself and your beliefs. It's as hard to work towards a really big goal as it is to work towards a small goal. So those would be my 3 ones.
Great. Yeah, can you share a little bit about your personal life and how you keep things in balance and perspective?
I'm still working on that. No, it's hard. My wife and I work long hours. Business is all consuming. I'm obviously on email every weekend, every night. But I think we make it work. We're very supportive of each other. We sometimes travel together. So if my wife has conferences somewhere, I will travel with her to support her, and she does the same. We do have a full-time nanny, which is super, super helpful. And then I've got my home gym. I work out at home. I run to the office. I take a shower in the office. You got to make it work somehow in the most time-efficient way. And then we try to have dinner together as much as we can. I'm still cooking 2-3 times a week. Obviously, I'm a paying Gousto customer, and that's important to us.
What do you see as the biggest trends happening in your business?
I think personalization of food is a huge trend that's powered by the necessity to be healthy. I think in 5 years, Gousto could be a preventive healthcare company. What I mean by that is, for the last 100 years, you and I have been eating pills, and healthcare was pretty much defined by eating pills. When you look at the future, healthcare is all about being active. It's about fitness, but then it's about food, and food as source of fuel. So I can see this world where convenience and online are powering the rise of personalization. 80% of our revenues are coming from the mobile phone. And people, really care about customizing everything, about personalizing it. What you eat is probably unhealthy for me. So I think this is the biggest trend we're trying to catch.
I've listened to you, and you're so impressive. You're making so much happen within your company, and you've got great desire to grow. How are you planning the long game for yourself? And where do you see yourself going from here?
My biggest hope is to be fortunate enough to run this company for a long time. I really think this is day one, and we've got so much opportunity to really have positive impact on people and the planet. But then on a personal level, I built those 10-year, not plans, but I have a view of where I want to be in 10 years, because I'm a massive believer in you being the best version of yourself and not looking at other people. Mm-hmm. So, I want to sit on a publicly listed board. I think that's the next step. Currently, I'm sitting on 2 amazing boards, but none of them is publicly listed. Since Gousto eventually might publicly list, I think that's a huge benefit for me and the company, for me to experience. And then it's all about staying hungry and exercising, being healthy, and continuing to learn and managing more and more people to experience how it feels.
Personally, you just mentioned the boards, but I understand that you've created your own personal board of advisors with you have around 10 mentors. Where'd you get this idea?
Yeah, so I now even by function have an advisory board. So I've got a tech advisory board, a marketing advisory board. And over time, I realized that people are genuinely so keen to help. And if you ask them to help, they normally say yes. So since I'm not an expert in technology, I rely on other amazing world-class chief technology officers to join me for a bottle of wine and discuss what Gousto is doing well and what Gousto is not doing well, so that I understand and can talk to my team in a better way. So I've also had the audacity to write crazy people letters. So I've written Al Gore a letter when I was 22 or 23, and to my huge surprise, he invited me for dinner. I've not only emailed him a letter, but I've emailed pretty much 5 to 10 superstar people a letter I wanted to meet. And Al Gore is one of the few people who actually came back saying, okay, let's have dinner. So I had the pleasure of having dinner with Al Gore 3 times in the last 6 years. So it kind of taught me the value of being slightly crazy and just asking, amazing people for help.
Well, I think I will make one comment here. Your craziness is definitely going to pay off. It's already paying off for you now. And it's so exciting to see someone like yourself who is so passionate about what you're doing for people and the business that you're building. I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights, Timo. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I read your books a couple of times, and it's been amazing meeting in person. Thank you.
Well, that was a really great conversation, and I just love Timo's learning mindset. And he started learning from a very young age what leadership really looks like. It, may look glamorous on the outside, but on the inside, it's all about managing yourself. It's about knowing what your demons are and how to keep your energy stable in the ups and the downs of life. And while Gousto is a high-powered data company with high expectations for performance, Timo has made it absolutely clear that cultural values of kindness and empathy are essential to equipping people to actually perform well together and to get those great results. Timo is also a big believer in setting big goals. I love how he talks about, when you set safe, mediocre goals for yourself, it's only going to lead to mediocre results. So think bigger and commit to achieving bigger goals. And like I said, in order to achieve the big goals he has set for himself, Timo knows that he has to be in a constant learning mode. He even had the audacity to email Al Gore, and he ends up having 3 dinners with him. So this is a guy who knows how to go after learning. And that's something that all leaders need to do. Hey, thanks for listening to How Leaders Lead with David Novak. Check out our other episodes and make sure to rate us and write a review. And for more information on how to become the best leader you can be, check out davidnovakleadership.com and follow me on Twitter at davidnovakogo.